Hey there, this is Oblivious Alsk. I just passed a really annoying test, and you're watching Science or Not. So yeah, this is Science or Not, a show where I talk about random interesting sciencey stuff that you perhaps didn't know you were interested in. As I said last time, I've amassed a whole bunch of sciencey stuff over the last months, and I'm just trying to catch up with myself. However, there's a lot of interesting science stuff that's come out recently that's actually interesting. So this week's episode is actually going to be more or less up to date. But before we get into that kind of stuff, let me show you this. Believe it or not, those cars are using the same quantum locking that I talked about in the last show. So although we haven't made use of quantum locking in hover cars or hoverboards, we can make a race car track. But if you want to see the whole video, the link's in the description. Alright, so first real story of the day. Call it what you will, simple reproduction, crossbreeding, evolution, whatever. But the first species of hybrid shark has been discovered. It's a combination of the common blacktip and the Australian blacktip. But since they have the same name, aren't they the same shark? No uninformed person. As it turns out, according to Wikipedia, these two sharks are entirely different species. And to say that they were the same would be similar to saying that lions and tigers were the same species. But just to make the convenient reference, ligers and tiglons do exist. And in case you can't figure it out, ligers and tiglons are combinations of a lion and a tiger. So seeing that these animals exist, there's nothing saying that two other similar species couldn't mix. However, the reason with the sharks is important and cool is, for one, it happened without direct human intervention. And two, the sharks may actually have had a reason for doing so. Now, I don't really know that much about genetics, so I can't just say that this is an anomaly or could actually happen between any two similar species of sharks. But that's not the point. The point is that sharks, or specifically the Australian blacktip, has found a way to ensure that its species' genes stay alive. If you look at life with legacy of genetics in mind, keeping your own genes alive is the meaning of life. That being said, the Australian blacktip is smaller than the common blacktip, only lives in the upper part of Australia, and can only live in tropical waters, while the common blacktip is found pretty much everywhere. However, the hybrid has been found 1,000 miles off the coast of Australia in cooler waters and is actually stronger than either of the original species. This could show that the Australian blacktip is actually trying to ensure that its own genes survive for the longest run possible. Okay, let's pause and think for a second. You don't have to believe that this story shows that living beings are hardwired to make their own genes survive. However, if you don't, please answer me one question. Why are there 7 billion people on this planet? New subject! Before we go on to the next story, let me just say, it's raining really hard outside behind me. So if you hear some random pitter-patter or some sort of... that's what you're hearing. Can you hear that? I don't know. Coming down pretty hard out there. Okay, but let's go on to the next story. Remember the episode, link right there, where I talked about zombie ants and how the parasite in question didn't just infect ants, but did to other insects as well? Well, we've got another situation that puts a similar issue on your lap. Not literally, of course. The zombie ants were just part of the circle of life. But this new parasite that we're about to talk about could put it in the circle of your life. I think there's a Google Plus joke in there somewhere. You may have heard the stories of a rapid decline in the worldwide honeybee population. Scientists in North California say that they have actually found the reason, or at least a factor in the reason, for this decline. They say that the major cause of this rapid decline may be a type of parasitic fly that takes over the bodies of adult honeybees and eventually kills them. It's been nicknamed the zombie fly, and for good reason. It's because the bees that it infects develop zombie-like behavior, losing their sense of direction, moving in circles, and eventually leaving the hive in the middle of the night to just die. Effectively turning this into this. No, into this. That's better. An interesting thing about the behavior shown by bees that have been infected by zombie flies is actually very similar to the symptoms of something called colony collapse disorder, which is basically where all the adult bees in a hive suddenly vanish. Hey, where'd I go? Bring me back. So far, researchers haven't been able to determine the cause of colony collapse disorder, but hypothesize that it involves a number of factors, probably including pesticide exposure, mites, fungi, and wait for it, parasites. The zombie fly is a known carrier of many parasites that affect honeybees, and studies have confirmed that bees from hives that have been infected by these flies test positive for several viruses and other pathogens. Now we get to the part that concerns you. And no, this zombie fly cannot turn you into a zombie. But if you don't think bees are important in your life because you don't eat honey or something like that, that would be where you're mistaken. Bees don't just make honey. They actually pollinate a good third of the country's food supply. And the fact that the bees that were studied were from California is even more unsettling because the country's top producer of fruits and vegetables is California. Researchers are still looking into the fly's effect on bees in agriculture in other parts of the United States, but it's definitely an issue of concern. So what can you do about it? I have no idea, but perhaps you can think of something. My job is to inform you. Your job is to do something with the knowledge I give you. Or you could just keep sitting in front of your computer watching YouTube videos. That's fine too.
News subject.
Okay, so let's go on to a lighter note, shall we? The next thing I want to talk about is simply junk food. Now, I eat junk food a little too often in general, although junk food at any amount is too much junk food, but that doesn't mean I can't make fun of it. Okay, so first of all, we all know, or at least I hope we all know, is that there is sugar put into almost every piece of processed food we eat, and that society will likely never get over its sugar addiction. Speaking specifically of sucrose. However, some researchers have made some good points that sugar is both addictive and, believe it or not, toxic. Okay, that's at least how it played out in my head. So if this is true and sugar is actually a toxin, why not regulate it as such? Similar to the regulation of even tobacco or alcohol. Some ideas being bounced around include a sugar tax put on any product with added sugar, banning the sale of sugary drinks to children under the age of 17, and tightening the zoning laws for the sale of sugary beverages and snacks in schools and low-income areas that have high obesity rates. Can you imagine how the people would react if this was actually going to play out? We'd have rioting in the streets, kids everywhere complaining to their parents about, "Where'd the candy go?" Halloween would consist of treats like nuts and popcorn, and likely a majority of college students would just completely fail. However, if you look at it on the opposite point of view, it paints a much different picture. More than 2/3 of the population is overweight, half of which are obese. About 80% of these who are obese will have diabetes or other metabolic disorders, and will have shortened lives. And about 75% of the US healthcare dollars are spent on diet-related diseases. 75%! That is a lot of tax money spent on fat people. Also, average Americans consume 600 calories per day from added sugar, which is equivalent to 40 whole teaspoons. That is about 20 of these things. Okay, you can tell I'm getting worked up here, but really, if it doesn't get you worked up, there's something wrong. But let's tone it down a little bit. Something important to think about is that nature made sugar hard to get for a reason, examples of which are fruits available only during certain parts of the year, or honey that's guarded by bees, or zombie honey that's guarded by zombie bees. But what I'm getting at is that man made sugar easy to get. Another argument about it is that another common sugar called fructose, which you've probably heard about from high fructose corn syrup, is metabolized within the liver. And with lots of fructose, the liver becomes resistant to insulin, which is the chemical that regulates sugar in your body. This resistance is one of the underlying causes of obesity. So you, the viewer, what do you think about regulating sugar? Do you agree with these scientists thinking that it's just about as addictive as alcohol or tobacco? Or do you want to keep sugar where it is in society, and just keep eating it until our belts explode? Let me know in the comments down below, and you could win, I don't know, a free hug. That's all I have.
News subject.
Okay, so even though we had that little transition there, we're going to keep talking about junk food. And to work our way into that, take a look at this. This is called pink slime, and rightfully so. It's spare beef trimmings that have been treated with ammonium hydroxide, otherwise known as ammonia, which is an ingredient in many window cleaners. And apparently it turns the meat pink. Now the meat doesn't actually have ammonia in the final product, it's really just a processing agent, but still. Now here's the punchline. They put that in your burgers and tacos as meat filler. The good news? McDonald's, Burger King, and Taco Bell aren't using it anymore. The bad news? The school system has no current plans for taking it out of the food you're giving to your children. The reason anybody used it in the first place is because it lets you use more of the cow for food, because you aren't actually using as much beef per pound. Also, the reason that the trimmings must be treated with ammonia is that they come from the part of the cow that harbor the most bacteria, such as Salmonella and E. coli. However, there's no actual proof that ammonia actually kills these bacteria. And as an added point, it only cuts off 3 cents per pound of meat. And when it comes right down to it, you never know if what you're eating has pink slime in it or not. So are you willing to risk you or potentially your child's health for saving less than a penny on a burger for your dog-grade meat? I know I wouldn't. Alright, that's not everything I got for you, but I don't really want to be up all night editing. Links to everything I talked about are in the drop-down bar, including a bonus story about a snowy owl migration. If you have any other cool science stuff that you'd like me to talk about, leave it in a comment down below, or on Facebook, or an email if you know me that well, or whatever, and I might put it in the next show. Click like if you liked the video, and click subscribe if you haven't already and would like to see more of me. Until next time, ciao!